We finally have answers as the real reason why Jacob Trouba has not been traded yet after a denied trade to the Detroit Red Wings has come out. And the details are quite shocking and may leave Rangers fans fired up. We're going to break all of that down, but before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 80% of you watching our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel, so if you want to do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. Now, let's waste no time. Let's dive right into it. This video, of course, is going to be about Jacob Trouba, and of course, there was a lot of rumors flying around. Will he go to Detroit? Will he go to Buffalo? It's now looking likely that he will stay in New York. And is that necessarily a bad thing? We'll break it down in this video. But last week, or just a couple days ago, I should say, this came out. It was another article from Vince, and it said, are the New York Rangers done yet? And it was a great article on a bunch of talking points about the team, a lot of which, have been solved with the signing of Braden Schneider and stuff like that. But there was an interesting tidbit on Jacob Trouba and an interesting quote. And that quote is, the team dynamic is messy right now. Quote, messy right now. According to one league source, given the Trouba drama and the devious manner in which Gaudreau was waived. So it sounds like some of the Rangers players are a little disgruntled with the way things are happening. Now, I did say in a previous video that the Rangers probably have to start acting like the Vegas Golden Knights if they want to win a championship. They have to be a bit ruthless with their decisions, and sometimes these things happen where players get upset. So maybe they just have to, bust through that and make sure they're making the best decisions possible for the hockey team. Because at the end of the day, if you're a fan, you want the team to succeed. I'm not sure, obviously you want players to succeed, but you want the team to win a Stanley Cup. And, how do you get there, right? You have to make some tough decisions. So it sounds like people are pretty disgruntled, and there's some shocking details about what went down with Jacob Trouba, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But remember this. This is from an article as well. Trouba also has a 15-team no-trade list, so he has a significant say over whether and where he will get dealt. Let's see if the Sabres' reported interest in Trouba leads to them landing him from here. Now, we know that Detroit's interested. We know that the Sabres, the Buffalo Sabres, are interested, right? And he has a 15-team no-trade list. Remember that. We'll continue, right? This came out about a couple days ago as well. Is Drury doing some cooking behind the scenes? All of a sudden, I've seen several different rumors pop up on my timeline today. Buffalo is interested in Trouba. The Sharks, Flames, Penguins in on Kakko. We covered that in a video last week as well. And the New York Rangers are interested in Mackenzie Weegar. I covered that in a video. Mackenzie Weegar possibly for Kaapo Kakko. Very interesting trade there, proposal. Typically right now is when GMs begin their summer, when things start cooking again. So there are some rumors out there, and I think that's pretty interesting. Now, this is the biggest piece to the whole Jacob Trouba puzzle of what happened here. And it's a pretty ugly situation, all right? So Stefan had learned last week, and this came out just a couple days ago at the end of last week. It was crazy to learn that Trouba, a Michigan native, added Detroit to his no-trade list when he heard where the New York Rangers wanted to send him. So if you remember, before I continue, if you remember on draft weekend, right, there was an article that came out by Larry Brooks that stated the New York Rangers were looking to move Jacob Trouba to the Detroit Red Wings. And Elliot Friedman had it as well on the draft floor. Emily Kaplan was saying that there's some smoke to the rumors as well. So that was coming out on the second day of the draft. It looked like Jacob Trouba was going to be a Red Wing on the second day of the NHL entry draft, right? With free agency just a few days later, and when Jacob Trouba's no move kicked in. His no move came off, and it became a modified no trade clause, right? That's when that kicked in on July 1st. But this info became readily available to him the day before. So keep that in mind, okay? We'll get back to it in a second. So all legal too, as he did it before he submitted it to the New York Rangers, right? So this information comes out on, let's say, the 30th, right? I think it was the 30th. It was that Saturday. And then the free agency is on the Monday, just 2 days later, right? When he has to submit this list. So this information becomes available to him 2 days before. He submits a list 2 days later. Anyway, officially 2 days later. Reports getting out changed everything for the New York Rangers. What an ugly situation. So it truly seems like at this point, the reports all came out on that Saturday, right? They were getting ready to move him to Detroit. Detroit wanted this player. There was going to be some salary retained involved, but the Rangers were going to make out pretty well in this trade, right? Forget the return at this point because it was just the salary coming off the books. I'm sure the return would have been pretty decent because Jacob Trouba is still a very good player, and I'm sure Detroit would like a player like that in their lineup. He would help them, right? So this information comes out on the Saturday. Jacob Trouba then has 2 days to digest this information and put Detroit, where he is from Michigan, where, you know, you would think he would want to go back and play, on his no trade list, his 15 no trade list. And now the New York Rangers, without his permission, cannot trade him there as of July 1st. That is interesting, mind-blowing. That is an ugly situation, right? Because if it had not come out, and we'll get to who's to blame in a second, if there is even anyone to blame. If it had not come out, maybe he doesn't put Detroit on his no trade list, and Jacob Trouba is a Detroit Red Wing at this point. I thought that was very interesting. And some more interesting quotes as well from Stefan. Had the reports never come out about Jacob Trouba going to Detroit, no one should be knocking any reporter for doing their job, as this falls on general manager Chris Drury or whoever leaked the information. He likely wouldn't have included them on his no trade list. So there's a confirmation right there. Had this not come out one way or another, and listen, you cannot knock reporters. I agree with that. I mean, Brooks, say what you want about him, but he was doing his job at the same time, right? You can say whatever you want about him, and we all know the backstories there and all of that. We know everything about that, right? But when you look at it, again, I'll bring it up again, you know, I'm not blaming Chris Drury, but however this information came out directly influenced what happened with this situation here. And I think that's incredibly interesting. And it sounds like he could have been a Red Wing at this point had this information not come out, because he put Detroit on his 15-team no-trade list as soon as he found out about this, right? And he had 2 days to basically make up his mind and change things. I thought that was very interesting. And this is from Remy. The longer the Rangers hold off now on a trade, the more likely it is that Trouba will remain in New York for this upcoming season. Most notable free agents have already been signed, meaning if the Rangers were to move on from Trouba, that would leave a major hole in their roster, since it would be a lot harder to replace him now. And I think that is why it looks like Jacob Trouba will remain a New York Ranger. He could have been a Detroit Red Wing. Information came out. He blocked the trade. He has every right to do that. It's in his contract, so I'm not blaming the player. That is for sure. It looks like they were going to move on from him. I don't think they can at this point, because you can't find another trade partner. Obviously, Buffalo's in talks, but what are you getting back from Buffalo? I made a video the other day about maybe Alex Tuch. Realistically, would Buffalo do that? Probably not, because he's, you know, a big part of their plans heading into the future. So very interesting. Very interesting situation there. For those of you who don't know the story and why Jacob Trouba does want to stay in New York, you know, as much as possible, and why he had a no trade up until this year, is because basically, you can pause and read this if you want. But the situation is basically like the residency got delayed a year. And again, if you want to read into it, pause it. That's all here, and you can Google it as well if you would like. It got delayed a year longer than it should have. So at this point, Jacob Trouba may have been, you know, if things went to plan, he may have been open to being traded, but that's not what happened, and he wants to stay in New York, I think, for at least another year. So the Rangers can move off of Jacob Trouba again next year. I think they can maybe revisit that, but for this year, I think a lot of Rangers fans were hoping to have that cap off you know, the books, so they can look to the future, which Shesterkin and Lafreniere and stuff like that, because we keep talking about that as well. So very interesting, and that was the article as well from Remy. And this is the last thing I wanted to touch on. Be upset, Trouba is still a Ranger all you want, but stop blaming him for using a right the Rangers gave him. If anything, blame Brooksy for putting the Wings rumor out there. If it doesn't get out there, then maybe he's a Red Wing right now. Now, personally, I'm going to say there's a lot of opinions and perspectives on this. I'm going to say I'm not sure you can blame any one person. This was a bad mix of... This is a bad situation, just a bad mix. I'm not going to blame Jacob Trouba because, you know, he has every right to use what's in his contract, right? And the information that was made available to him, he made a decision. And that's just what it is, right? And maybe things would have been different if it didn't come out, but we'll never know. And Brooks was doing his job, right? Say what you want about Brooks. He was doing his job, and the information was leaked out there. It was just a bad combination, a bad scenario. And if, you know, any one thing didn't happen, then things may be different, but that's what happens in sports. That's the beauty of sports and hockey in general. So very interesting. Jacob Trouba could have been a Detroit Red Wing right now had, you know, this information not come out one way or another. So let me know in the comments what you think of the details of everything coming out. And, you know, heading into the future, what is the Rangers' first of all, lineup look like next year? It looks like Jacob Trouba is going to be in the lineup. He's going to be a Ranger again next year. They can probably revisit this next summer if they want. But very interesting. He was so close. If the information had not come out just before he had to submit his list, he may be a Detroit Red Wing right now. Very interesting. And let me know in the comments if you think Chris Drury is done. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.